Have you ever watched someone get promoted and thought, how did that happen? Or even better, they're good, but this is not from jealousy, but a feeling that your work is not being recognized. And yeah, it's frustrating because you're not asking for special treatment. You're simply wondering why hard work doesn't seem to speak for itself. And we've been told that if we work hard enough and produce great results, someone will eventually notice. You know what I'm talking about, right? Good old merit, as if simply showing up, doing well, and waiting your turn will automatically pay off. But leadership doesn't work that way. Today, we're talking about one of the biggest myths in professional growth, that simply showing up and doing great work will get you recognized. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalyst. I'm your host, Shanita B. This is where we explore how a thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at life's crossroads can become the catalyst for meaningful change in your leadership and the direction of your life. So by the end of this episode, you're going to understand why excellent work does not always get you where you want to be as a leader. And it doesn't get you seen even as a leader. We're going to talk about how leadership actually works. And we're also going to talk about the choices that you can make today to become more visible without feeling like you're self-promoting. All right. And before we get into the details of this, if confidence and visibility or even leadership growth have been a recurring crossroads for you, then I would love to invite you to my confidence masterclass. We're going to challenge you with one of the biggest myths that I think hold professionals back. And that would be that confidence is something that you have to feel before you can lead. So really, once you understand what confidence really is, you'll approach opportunities, visibility, and leadership in an entirely different way. And so you'll find the registration link in the show notes. And if you're not quite ready for the masterclass, then go ahead and feel free to click the link for the free guide, the free reflection guide. It's going to be the Crossroads Reflection Guide, and it's really designed to help you gain some clarity on where you are, why you're there, and what you want to do next. Okay, so jumping in, what is the crossroads here? So you have a situation where you know that you are delivering results, and any number of people will spit your name out when they say that something needs to get done because you are dependable. You've demonstrated that. You solve problems, but when the opportunities become available, you completely miss out on those. And so at some point, as a high performer, you have to ask yourself some questions because you're recognizing that you are not making the strides that you anticipated. You have to ask yourself, do I keep believing that someone will eventually notice what I'm bringing? Or do I become intentional about how my leadership is seen? And if you're not asking yourself this question, you're going to continue to encounter this crossroad because that question can change everything. Because a lot of people are focusing on the wrong thing. You're trying to solve for the wrong problem. It's not more work that you need to get done. It's not being more available to people. Okay. I can remember that early in my career, someone gave me some feedback and it didn't really sit too well with me at the time. And one of the things that they told me is that you need to talk more about what it is that you're doing. And basically this is what we would call the toot your own horn type theory, right? And I can tell you that I did not have much appreciation for that advice because I don't really like to do a whole lot of talking. And in those moments, it felt like what they were telling me to do was to brag on myself. And I don't want to do that. That just was not who I was. I am naturally an internal processor, and a lot of you may be the same. You think through things, you observe, you work it out, and boom, you've delivered. But in those instances, what I was hearing was not aligning with what I really wanted to do. And a part of me being an internal processor, I also tend to think before I speak, I observe before I contribute, and I really do let my work speak for itself. And at the time, okay, yeah, like I said, I only partially understood what they meant. But after working in several organizations with different leaders and different workplace cultures, I more fully understood what they were trying to tell me. They were not asking me to brag. They were not asking me to put my ego out there. They were asking me to become more visible. Leaders cannot evaluate what they never hear. All right. They cannot promote ideas that they don't know you have, and they cannot connect you to bigger opportunities if your thinking stays inside your head. They have no idea what brought you to the conclusions, what brought you to the results. They have no idea how you think through things. Even today, I am still naturally an internal processor. That hasn't changed. So it's not about changing your personality, the core of who you are. And, it should go without saying, maybe you have to do some evaluation, some self evaluation to understand if there's some trait that would prevent you from moving forward. Because, we know by now that personality traits, some of them can be changed. Okay. But I digress. What has changed is that I've learned that leadership is not just about having good ideas. It's really about making those ideas accessible to the people who are making the decisions. And so, therefore, visibility is not about changing your personality. It's about changing your habits and barring some of the office politicking that might get in the way of some opportunities. We want to focus on getting clear about the things that are true. Okay. So I would say that number one, great work, it does earn credibility. People will trust you because of what you've delivered. Competence matters. Yes. Reliability matters. Results matters. And without those things, leadership doesn't happen for most of us. Okay. Again, barring the office politicking, that is not going to be on the agenda. But these things are only part of the picture. Does that make sense? I'm sure it does. So then here's another thing. Leaders are not recognized merely because of potential, because there are a lot of people who will come through the workplace, they will do great work. But the fact that you might appear as if you could do something, that's not enough. So just like in your personal life, you wouldn't rest your entire future on a relationship with someone who just has potential. They're not going to do that at work either. And they shouldn't, nor should you. So leadership is recognized through patterns, observable patterns. Leaders are looking for consistent evidence, no differently than you would look for in members of your team. If you have a position that becomes available on your team, and maybe you have some junior team members, and you have a more senior level position available, you're looking for someone who has demonstrated that they are already capable of doing that work. You're not just looking for the person who just kind of sits back. Yes, they provide some great deliverables and outcomes, but because they don't really process externally and share some of their thoughts, you don't really know how they derived some of their work, how they got where they got, is ultimately what I'm saying. And so because leaders are looking for consistent evidence, they're asking questions like, can this person think beyond today? And do they have the ability to influence others? And influence is a big deal. And we'll get into that in some of the future episodes. They're also asking, can they solve problems? Can you solve problems? Can you represent the team? And another thing, trust is really important. One of the questions that leaders ask is, can I trust this person with more responsibility? This is not, these questions are not answered by simply doing one project really well. It has to be repeated things. Okay. These behaviors have to show up consistently because again, leaders are not, they don't promote potential. Leaders don't promote potential. They recognize patterns, and those patterns are either going to be for your good or to your disadvantage. Okay. So then here's another thing that is really important. Visibility is imperative. If no one beyond your manager knows who you are, then your work, even though it might be important in the micro, it may be inconsequential in the macro because your connection to it gets cut off. No one even knows way down the road that you had any involvement in that work. So visibility is not self promotion. And again, I think that this is where a lot of you get uncomfortable because what you might be saying or what you think might be presented is, look at what I did. And yes, we know that there are some people who come off like that. And that's exactly what it is that they're attempting to do, is to call attention to themselves. That is not the point. Visibility is making your leadership easier to recognize. It is revealing how you think. And I'll give you an example. I consider it to be something like explaining your reasoning instead of only sharing your conclusions. And it's kind of like having a conversation with a friend to talk through why you made a decision or you chose a specific thing. This is why it's helpful to have a good colleague at work as a sounding board, because it really does give you the opportunity to kind of tap in to your thoughts. And when you hear them, then you recognize, okay, this is where I am. I know that this is how I thought about something. And so it gives you something to pull out when you're conversing about your decision making process or how you came to a particular deliverable. Okay, that's just one example. Another thing that you can do is just ask some strategic questions. Remember, a good strategic question can start with a simple why. Why did we make this decision, or why do we do a particular process this way? When I see this, this is what I think. It's just offering your insight. That's what it comes down to, because what you have to say in that context, it is important, and you might help to spark the conversation that's going to lead to the next major decision, which could potentially steer a department, an organization, a project in the way that it needs to go. But if you don't contribute, then you won't get any of the glory that might come down the road. Okay. And so you also want to connect your work to larger organizational goals. This is really important because as organizations continue to work through their strategies and setting objectives and goals, if you can connect how your work contributes to that, that's going to speak volumes for you. And another thing that you can do, this is the last example that I'll give. Share some of the lessons that you've learned with the work that you've been doing. People can glean information from you, they can glean insights from you. Make sure that you understand that your work is important. All right. People are not just noticing the work, they're noticing some leadership behaviors that are being demonstrated as you go through this process. All right. So, in the next phase, now we have some choices. You have choices that you can make. You have to ask yourself, will I keep hoping that my work speaks for itself, or will I speak for my work? Again, this goes back to just walking through how you derived some of the information, how you came to some of those conclusions. And again, giving people the opportunity to give you feedback about your ideas and not to tear them down, but really, having those brainstorming sessions. Those are still very valid and they're still very helpful. You have to learn to put yourself in the position to not just let the work do the talking. All right. Another choice that you have is to ask yourself, will I stay inside my job description, or am I going to demonstrate ownership beyond it? And I want to qualify this by saying this does not mean that you take on every project and that you burn yourself out. That is not at all what I mean. What I mean is, if you're already fulfilling the description of your job, if there are other tasks and projects to which you would like to contribute, or if there are other areas that are of interest to you that you would be happy to participate in a project, not even necessarily own the project or lead it, but maybe be a major contributor to it or co-lead. Make yourself available. Because of course all of this depends on what it is that you're trying to do, what your particular goals and objectives are. And maybe you're in a leadership position, but you want the next level of leadership. Well, these are some of the things that you're going to have to do. And so it first starts with asking yourself a question with, what is it am I actually willing to do to get there? And then another choice that you have is and ask yourself this: will I wait until someone asks for my opinion, or will I begin to contribute what I'm thinking to the process? And I think that that's really key, because it is easy, especially if you're an introvert, to just sit back in the meeting, observe, and not say a thing. And in those moments, you lose an opportunity to be more visible and to contribute to whatever that topic of discussion is in a meaningful way. Sometimes what it is that you contribute can completely change the turnout and the results. And if it turns out that turns it out into a good thing, you definitely want credit. And sometimes even if it doesn't work out, you at least contributed. Because again, sometimes we just have to go through the rigmarole of trying things as they come along. That's where you want to be. Okay. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Okay. None of these choices require a new title. They require a different mindset. So you should walk away from this recognizing that you're going to have to think differently about how you show up. It's not going to be enough to show up. You have to be visible. And by being visible, you're going to have to share some of your inner work, some of the things that you've thought through and considered as you carried out your work. Remember that promotions rarely begin the day that the position opens. They begin months earlier as leaders build confidence in what they're consistently observing. So every meeting, every conversation, every problem that you solve, you're shaping how people experience your leadership long before they make decisions about your future. And this is not to say that they own your future, because no one owns your future but you. But if you are in a place where you want to be seen as a leader, where you want to be taken seriously as a leader, you're going to have to change your mindset and you're going to have to show up differently. And my best friend and I at work, we would discuss this on a pretty frequent basis. If you want to position yourself for the promotion, you have to play the role even before it becomes available. And that's not always easy to do. You have to understand your context and how to navigate that context. This is only one aspect of it. So your next opportunity won't be decided when the position opens. Now you're standing at a crossroads. So you can keep hoping that your work speaks for itself, or you can intentionally demonstrate the leadership others need to see. Because your next move may become the catalyst that changes how people see you and the opportunities they trust you to lead. That's really where you're trying to go. So if today's episode challenged you and you've been thinking about leadership, don't let this become another insight that you simply agree with. You might be nodding your head. Yeah, I know what that's like. You have to put something into action. All right. So one thing that you can do is you can download my Crossroads Reflection Guide. It's going to help you to identify where you've been waiting, where you might need some clarity, and the next leadership choice that can become the catalyst for your future. Okay. And if you're ready to learn more, then again, I'm inviting you to join me for the Confidence Masterclass. We're going to get a little bit deeper into why waiting to feel confident often keeps capable and competent leaders from being seen. And I'll show you a different way to think about confidence, one that can really help to change how you approach leadership opportunities. All right. I appreciate that we had the opportunity to talk about this today and that you stuck it out with me. Thank you so much for listening. So until next time, be thoughtful, be wise, be strategic, and remember, crossroads reveal who you are. Catalysts shape who you become. Every decision matters. So make it count. I'll talk to you next week.